Let's start off with the Lucky Luxon. Luckity Luxon. Cluckety Luckity Cluxon. Mr. Luxon was on Newstalk ZB today. And you know what I also saw when I was watching this show? I'm like, fuck, these adverts suck. One question, Nick. I used to work there. I know what 9 ad breaks an hour feels like.
Yeah.
But actually watching it since you've been out of it, it's like, man, this kills conversation. Even Kerry Woodham in the conversation was like, I'm so sorry for all the ads. I'm like, dude, they're what's paying you that hundreds of thousands of dollars salary you get. What a killer, man. What an absolute killer. Right, we're going to have a look at a couple of things, then we're going to delve off into some we call them facts that Mr. Luxon and Kerry Woodham don't seem to know about, but we'll pull some of those back in during this conversation. The first part of the conversation we're going to play, though, is talking about nursing and the restrictions around nursing and what's happening with nursing, because this government keeps telling us we're doing this, and it feels like we keep hearing from the medical fraternity, you're not doing anything. So it was to her credit, Kerry gave a few soft pushbacks. She certainly at the end talked about, because you certainly don't want to see the Greens and Te Pāti Māori in there, so we know where her bread is buttered. But she gave a couple of gentle pushbacks along the way. Let's hear the conversation about nurses and needing more of them.
Frustrating to hear money has been generously spent in health. In actual fact, there's been huge staffing shortages where I am due to restrictions on replacing staff who leave. And I've heard that from other nurses. Yeah,
it's interesting because we've put $17 billion extra in last year. We've put another 7% increase, 6% per capita in 2025 budget. So there is plenty of money going in. We actually have hired 2,100 extra nurses. We've hired 600 more doctors into Health New Zealand. And actually, if you think about nurse pay, for example, it's gone up 74% since 2011.
I know, but they're not replacing staff.
No, but the issue is then what you've seen also, though, is attrition, people leaving the system.
Craig Rennie's podcast, I think, last week showed nurses' salaries from, I think, 2011 compared to GDP. And since 2011, they have not had a pay rise above inflation. That's what I meant to say, inflation. So they're actually in exactly the same place today where they were back then. They've had no increase. They've only kept up with inflation and no more for 15 years. So when he says 74% increase, it's like, but this is them talking about the 125,000, which we've debunked so many times. It's ridiculous. But look, we'll get to the end of this bit.
It was actually coming down. So it's gone from 14 down to 8%. But your point is a fair one. Where we've got real challenges is in regional, provincial New Zealand.
But it's my 3 nurses who've said,
yep,
I can't work harder. You know?
No, they're doing an incredible job. The nurses are doing an incredible job, and the doctors are too.
The staff who leave are not being...
I don't think this government realises, Bomber, that when someone does an incredible job, it's appropriate to remunerate them and for that to reflect of the incredible job they're doing. Platitudes on Newstalk ZB doesn't pay their power bills. Normally, when people are amazing, they should be remunerated in a way that recognises that, not having to scrounge and fight for 1%, which is what they're looking at.
Being replaced.
Yeah, the thing is, they should be, because there's plenty of money in the system and there's plenty of extra people in the system, and we've got to now try and get the third medical school's a desire to get the provincial doctors out and the nurses out, and we've got challenges in mental health and some specialist roles as well. So that's
why aren't they being hired? If there's money there and nurses there, why aren't they being hired?
Well, they are. There is just not in this particular circumstance.
3 particular circumstances.
Yep, get it. But I'm just saying to you, in aggregate, there is now 2,100 extra nurses in the system on top of what we had when we started.
And I think that's
the question is, though, like if I say I've put 100 litres in, but my pool is 1,000 litres, it's not enough water. It's not enough water.
And that's what's fundamentally just so deceptive about this entire debate, right? All of the numbers that he's throwing out, yes, they have hired that extra amount. Yes, they have put that extra amount of money in. No one's suggesting that isn't the case. What we're suggesting is that they put that extra money in, but they were asked for so much more to be able to pay for the aging population and the increase in people, the population growth, right? Yeah. So they say, yes, we'll put this extra money in, but it wasn't actually what was asked for. What was asked for to keep up with the population and the aging population was far more than what they put in. Yeah. And so he can say we've got 2,000 extra nurses, yeah, but we needed 4,000, mate.
Yeah.
Right,
and that's what we're going to go into.
Yeah.
We're going to go into the facts. Something else that I haven't actually shared yet, and I'll do this. You see what I'm holding in my hands here? 2 pages. Yeah. A nurse wrote me, and I'm now putting it away so you can't see the name. A nurse wrote me a 1,157 word email about what nursing's really like today. And after we hear from Luxon telling how good they're doing, I'm going to read you. Maybe not quite half, but maybe 40% of this, obviously taking away all the identifying information to actually hear from a nurse how great it is that Luxon's telling them. So this has got about 60 seconds. We'll get to this clip and then we'll go into that.
It's a real problem when you say we've got more nurses and you go, not next to me when I'm on the ward.
And that's what I'm admitting.
Or the economy's doing better. Not in my household.
No, that's right. And so I get that. I really understand
it's an okay
that.
Pushback.
I've got to try and solve initially from where we were, where we're losing 14% of our nurses every year out of the New Zealand healthcare system, to a place now where we're losing 8%, which is about sort of what normal attrition would be. I've got to do everything I can to put the money in at a system level, but I agree with you completely. You know, we have big gaps of support in key parts of our healthcare system, and we've actually got the money going and we've got the people being hired, but they're not being deployed in the right places, or there's more work to do to get them perfectly deployed into the right places. So
who fixes that?
Well, so for example, you know, we know we've got a challenge in provincial and rural health in New Zealand, right? It's really hard because you get efficiencies in a big city and you can end up with postcode lottery as a result.
Yeah,
so
which is what we have got.
Yep, and so what we've done is said, like, if you're a GP in a regional New Zealand area, we will give you $20,000 to go off and actually hire that extra nurse that you might need. We're trying to put 450 more nurse places into what's called nurse practitioner or nurse prescriber training to build out the system that we're going to need for the future. But you're also changing the wheel while you're driving, and there are shortages in key places across New Zealand as every day, and that is the reality of the system right now. And that's why I keep coming back to, you can put the money in, you can put the people in, but if you've got a massive bureaucracy that actually then isn't focused on getting that through the bureaucracy out to the front line to support our doctors and nurses who are doing a kick-ass job, that's what we've got to work on.
So one of the things he obviously banged on about, like he's constantly banging on about, is money to the front line, getting out of the back room, money to the front line. So Bomber, you've already said the number, 4,000 nurses short. This was as this government was coming in. Grown to 4,800 short. So putting 2,100 in sounds great. We need another 2,700 on top of that. We have 100 litres of water going into our spa pool. There is a lot more to go. And what this government's doing, and obviously we're lucky enough to be connected to people in the industry now doing podcasts on this network, is that they say, no, there's no hiring freeze. There's no hiring freeze. And what's happening is in a hospital where there might be 30 or 40 vacancies, they're allowed to hire 1 or 2. So in other words, they can say, we're hiring people every week. Yeah, but not to the standard or the level that we require.
And the other thing that's really important to understand in all of this is that a lot of that extra money that they keep claiming and keep pointing to pouring in, that's not going to public health. It's going to private health companies, for-profit companies. They are stepping in and they are getting more of the public health purse pushed their way in really cushy deals. And this is part of a privatization agenda aimed at public health that we're having in public education, that we're having on our roads with mass surveillance networks now. This is an ongoing privatization agenda, and it's not explained that way because the ideological framework is considered too complex by news producers in the mainstream. So it's never explained actually that this is part of a privatization agenda, right? Yeah. It just is.
And unfortunately, I mean, like, with all due respect, I would welcome him on email this week again to Simeon Brown. Love to come on and talk about the nurses. No reply. No reply. Here's some more information being out there. So the backroom front line, out of the backroom into the front line. This is from the NZNO. Recruitment has now been paused on all hospital roles that are not patient facing. So these are the backroom officers, and all public health roles that are not community facing as part of the cost cutting. Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora says new measures will not impact frontline services. New Zealand Nursing Organisation Chief Executive Paul Golter says it appears that little consultation has been done on this change and what it means for frontline staff such as nurses. Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora should have spoken to unions before going ahead with this move. It is inevitable that this recruitment freeze will impact frontline services. It will lead to understaffing in support roles such as admin, IT support, laboratory testing, data collection that will directly affect frontline staff. These roles are the ones that support frontline workers to do their jobs well. Health is a system that needs both frontline and non-patient or community-facing roles to work well. And I don't think it could be said any better. I've always used the example, could you imagine your primary school with no caretaker? How would that fall over in the space of just a day or two? This pun from RNZ goes on to talk about the freezing roles that we've just said, one very quickly. A nurse at the Southern DHB told RNZ a role in their department had been empty for about 10 weeks after a colleague left, even though a manager requested they be replaced almost immediately. Normally approval would take about a week, 2 at the most. She wanted Te Whatu Ora to be honest about what was happening. An internal Te Whatu Ora recruiter who asked not to be named said many of her colleagues had been in tears as they spoke to angry clinical managers, wondering why nothing was happening about roles that needed to be filled. The managers had been initially told the freeze did not apply to clinical roles, but recruiters have been told to pause everything.
Of course.
Everything.
Of course. Of course.
I've got this email I want to read, but do you want to say anything about that stuff before I get into it?
No, please. I'd really like to hear this.
So 1,157 words. Obviously, I'm taking out all the identifying information, including what kind of ward they work on. So I won't even say, is it cardiac? Is it what? I'm not even going to say. So I've been told in this email all about the ward that this nurse works on, and goes on to say this. It's a heavy ward whose patients have very complex needs. In most cases, very complex need in most cases. We are struggling. We've had, I think, 6 nurses leave this year. They've hired 3, only 1 new graduate, but the funding for the others had been declined. We only have 5 nurses on our ward who have been nursing longer than 5 years, which means greater than 75% of the nurses on my ward are juniors with less than 3 years experience in New Zealand. We do our absolute best for our patients, but the lack of experienced nurses is evident, which also means that the average nurse is absolutely not earning anywhere near the 125k mark that this government claim. I'd be surprised if our charge nurse earns that, more than that, and she's been in the game a long time. We are short-staffed all the damn time, is literally in capitals. I was injured on the job a couple of weeks ago. At a night shift, we were 2 nurses short. I had 11 patients, all with quite high level needs, multiple IV medications, all due at the same time, etc. A patient spilled something on the floor and failed to let anyone know. I went in to answer a call bell and slipped over, and it sprained my wrist quite badly as I put my hand out so I didn't smash my head on the metal rail of the patient's bed next to the space. And bruising my hip. Things could have been much worse if I'd hit my head, that's for sure. I went down to ED to make sure it wasn't broken, which thankfully it wasn't, but I had to return to the ward to finish my shift in 7 out of 10 pain. I couldn't have adequate pain relief, only paracetamol and ibuprofen, as per the protocols. If I'd had any opioid analgesia, I'll say, I would have been deemed unfit to return to my patients, which was not an option. I couldn't leave the 2 other nurses to finish my workload of medications. I still had to complete all my patient documentation and file an incident report for my fall so I could be covered by ACC, then hand over all my patients to the morning nurses. I'm still in pain, have weekly hand rehab, and am very, very angry. Management were aware of the short staffing before we even arrived for the shift, but they couldn't do anything to help cover us despite wanting to. Then there's a paragraph about pay. the point gets made that most nurses are actually not full-time. They're on 0.8 because they can't physically do any more, which means even when you're hearing 125, if that was right, it would be 0.8 of that. It wouldn't be 100, but it's not 125,000. Last paragraph. My point is we are seriously struggling, not just as a profession, but as individuals too. I'm sick of this shitty government, their elitist, entitled bullshit. I can't understand how so many people buy into their lies and continue to support them, despite being fucked over by them all the time. I'm sick of being sworn at, spoken down to, having urinal bottles thrown at me, being punched in the face by dementia patients when we have to change their soiled pads, adult nappies. I even had one patient pull out her own stoma pouch. I'm assuming that's for someone who passes their food into a pouch rather than out the bottom, full of feces, and attempt to throw it at me because I was unable to answer their call bell fast enough. And why couldn't she answer it fast enough? Because I had 4 other high-need patients to look after at the same time. I've been threatened with violence, spat at, called names, all for what? A system that thinks I should be grateful for this treatment because I actually have a job when others don't. Told that I knew what I signed up for when I became a nurse. It's all part of the job, and I'm being selfish and greedy for wanting to be able to pay my bills and save for the future. Last bit, 3 lines, most important bit. This government don't give a flying fuck about us or the public. It's getting to the point where chats around the break room are turning from any plans to move to Australia to what professions we could or would do when we leave nursing. 1,157 words. You've got about half of them. Mr. Luxon, I hope you get a copy of this video. Be nice to get some response to the actual nurses rather than the echo chamber of people believing what you're saying about nurses. Any thoughts, Bob?
I really think that part of the adaptation that the left needs to pick up in terms of moving forward is an appreciation of those who work for the state and the incredible importance that they play in our egalitarian liberal progressive democracy. I'm someone who believes that there needs to be a 15% pay rise across the board for nurses, for doctors, for public servants, for the bureaucrats there, for the firefighters, for the police officers, for the teachers, the people who are actually the backbone and the muscle of the kind of services that we all collectively need and are also important to us. We've actually got to do our public servants so much more good. We've got to look at 4-day weekends. We've got to look at more mental health days off. We've got to look at more holiday time. We're never going to be able to compete completely with the Australian wages. We're never going to be able to compete completely with the American wages. So let's give a quality of life in terms of our conditions here. And you start that in the public sector, and then you move to get it into the private sector. But to be able to do that requires us to tax the rich. And when you look at what this government has done, they have borrowed more than Labor. But the reason why they've borrowed more than Labor is so they can give their mates great big tax cuts and landlords tax loopholes to be able to exploit, and their mates in the tobacco bloody industry hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies. So there is a way to be able to do this. There is a way to be able to pay people like that nurse who are the bloody heroes of our country, the people who teachers who are working in bloody low socioeconomic areas, the policemen who are having to try and, tie together wounded communities, the people who are out there doing the work that makes the egalitarian state what it is. We should be giving them some more love. And there's a way to do it. It's just the right go, nah, fuck it. We want the tax cut, thanks.
100%. Yeah. Couldn't say it much better, so won't even try. We'll just jump into the next conversation with Mr. Luxon because we do have one more clip to play.
Yep.
The last clip, we've just got one other one to play. And actually it was, again, Kerry Woodham. I know where she sits politically. personally, I think she's a pretty horrible person from personal experience. But she does a couple of things here, and she pushes back. And this is based on someone does a talkback call, they phone in, and they basically go, when, Mr. Luxon, when are we going to see all these things you're promising? And Luxon, I don't know if you picked up on this, Bomber, I should have had it queued up. He said last week, we own this now. He was talking about inflation. We own this now. And I think he admitted that last week, and they're trying to walk it back already, because the economy in general, you own this now. But when it doesn't suit, they still seem to want to blame Labor. And when it suits, they kind of go, well, 5.2 is pretty good. It was supposed to be 5.4. Look how good we are. A caller who you can hear is at I would suspect the caller is still not someone necessarily politically, ideologically we would sit with. But it's a bit like in America, how even the people who voted for Trump are going, what have we gotten ourselves into? The people who voted for these guys still haven't got what they've been promised. And they're now going, when? So that's pretty much that.
I'm been working 45, 50 hours a week, Monday to Friday. I own a business and I run that in the weekends. Christmas time, I am pulling the pin of running my business because of all the tax that I have to pay. Tax, ACC, I'm sure you know, GST and everything else. My wife and I, who run the business, in and out of hospital, left, right and centre, because our bodies can't hack it anymore. We've been doing this for 10 years. And I know...
If only you had a decent public health system, mate, that might help a little bit, with those taxes and all that.
You didn't put us into this situation, but I tell you what, people are sick and tired of hearing all the stories that you and all your other guys say, you're going to do this, or we've done that, or the reason why we're in the situation is because of Labor. When are things actually going to stop being talked about and actually happen? Because I'm going to run myself into a grave. I've got grandkids who adore me and love me and want me to be around.
Absolutely.
Yet I am struggling, and I work 80 to 90 hours a week.
Yep.
And that's it. That's what I was saying
exactly
before, that disconnect between hearing that the economy's doing better. He's exhausted.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's really tough. It's really hard. And this is the consequence of a recession that we've had for 3 years. It's been the toughest since the early 1990s. That is the reality of what's happened in New Zealand.
Answer, Lux, and he's looking for an answer, not for you to explain what you see right now. What's the answer? When's it going to happen?
And, there you've got a situation where someone's working incredibly hard, cannot get ahead.
We know this. He just said this.
Into their life, into their family's life. And I get that and I understand that. That is the consequence of not managing an economy well.
We were told survive to 25. Here's 25. When will people start to feel better?
Well, again, this doesn't help an individual circumstances going through a really difficult and tough time. But at the macro level, the economists are saying to us, we're peaking with unemployment. We're expecting 2.7% growth. We're expecting to create 240,000 jobs in the next 4 years by virtue of the long-term plan, economic plan that we've put in place and that we've been implementing. But you've got a challenge here. One is we've got to run the economic stuff really well, which is the big picture stuff, which all sounds very numbers trace. We've got a plan for how we grow the future and get more wealth into the country. But in the short term, you've got people wrestling with the cost of living. They had 3 years of inflation going through the roof. Like life is hard, right? Yeah. So we can support the cost of living as best we can in targeted ways, but we've got to get growth into the economy so that people can get ahead.
And when?
Well, we expect unemployment to start trending down. It's supposed to peak now, come down, and then we expect growth to be taking place 2.7% over the next 4 years on average each and every year.
So that phone call and conversation was just under 3 minutes. He probably had 2 minutes of it to give an answer. He still didn't really answer it all the way to the very end. And two things I was going to say is the caller is a part, unfortunately, of that echo chamber. That you didn't put us in the system, is what he said. It's like, actually, there's been some decisions made, and Bomber, you already mentioned some about tax refunds that have absolutely contributed to this situation. And the thing that our lovely Chewie always says, and let's give him credit because he says it, is that these guys are not the government of business. If anything, they're the government of big business.
Yeah.
So that guy working his ass off 7 days a week. I mean,
that's
Bomber,
right.
You and I, we working and we do our own stuff and we run our own things. They're not the government. I don't think they're the government of business anyway. But if they were, it certainly wouldn't be of small business. It would only be big business. That's why, and I know someone pointed this out to me the other day, behind fucking Nicola Willis, when she's having press conferences, there's a model of a Fonterra truck. That's why that's there, because they are the party of big business.
Yeah, Labour does well for capitalism. National does well for capitalists. The National Party uses small business morality for big business interests. They do we're a household and we can only spend as much as you, and they play to that small business morality. And that, that business owner, my God, what a tragedy. What an absolute tragedy for that bugger, right? He has poured his heart out. That is a New Zealander and a Kiwi. Okay, he might not be our voting and not part of our tribe, but he's part of our village. And he's just trying to get ahead. He's done all the things right. He's worked and he's just absolutely swamped. And he's right. When the economy downturns as much as it has, the amount of tax he's having to pay does really bleed him, right? Because he doesn't have the profits coming in that he wouldn't mind that, right? And so he's getting screwed over. And he's getting screwed over because Nicola Willis is far more ideological and free market than anyone really understands nor appreciates. We see these steep cuts as visionless economics. She sees the steep cuts as the point. That's actually the purpose. This is about amputating the state because they have, as a matter of faith, they believe that the free market will step in and do the job cheaper. Now, the problem with that ideology is that we are 3 sparsely populated islands. We don't have the population density for the free market dynamics of competition to work the way that it does in America, the way that it does in Britain, the way that it does in densely populated areas. So they've taken a great big bloody hammer and a slash into all of the infrastructure spend of the government in the belief that the market would step in. What's actually happened? We've lost 28,000 jobs. 70,000 people have gone overseas. 600,000 New Zealanders are using food banks every single goddamn fucking month. The damage they've done, the shockwave of that, has caused all of these things to collapse. We've always required the state in New Zealand to step in and be the 40% foundational stone. They're trying to walk away from that obligation. And what's happened is the economy's imploded. That guy can't get ahead because no one's got any money to be able to pay for his services, right? And he represents many small entrepreneurs out there who are just going, what the bloody hell? And this government, all they're hoping for, Pat, is these 215 golden visas. They're going to say yes to all of them. That's $5 million a piece. That's $1 billion they're hoping comes into the economy next year. But it's not clear that the parameters of what those people have to invest in might not just inflame the property market or be spent on bloody crypto. It's not investment into New Zealand per se. Yeah. It's just money floating around. God knows what's going to happen. So I think that he's out of his bloody depth. As a CEO, he doesn't know how to deal with bloody Seymour or Winston. He's just going on what Nicola Willis is telling him, and Nicola Willis is here to vandalize the state. She's Ruth Richardson in drag, you know?
I thought Ruth Richardson was Ruth Richardson in drag. Yeah, it's tough. And look, this happened the other day when I think Nicola Willis was talking about something that David Seymour had said, and it kind of dawned on me. You know, we've actually worked for some pretty impressive managers in radio. I mean, on some of the people that we've worked under. And I remember one of the lessons, which is always the buck always stops with me. So when Nicola Willis talks about David Seymour and goes, well, actually, David Seymour is responsible for David Seymour's words. The Prime Minister is not responsible for them. I had that thought. I went, actually, Uncle Larry, More FM and Channel Z, he would have taken ultimate response. Any good CEO would go, the buck stops with me. If you're going to be the CEO, Prime Minister, you are ultimately responsible for what your managers say. So actually, they are running him round, and he's not being a CEO. If anything, he's being they're being the superior, and he's being the diminutive. So,
yeah, and I don't think he actually has a vision. I mean, beyond the talking points and we're doing this and we're doing that, but none of that stuff's working. because the underlying philosophy that you've adopted here doesn't bloody work, right? And it's not like, oh, this is a new idea. No, we've had this neoliberal bullshit, this cutback of the state. Keynesian theory dictates that as the bloody economy slows, you put more money into the productive. No, they're not doing that. They're plowing money that they're borrowing into tax cuts, for Christ's sakes.